Serafina had learned, very early in life, that the best way to survive was to be unseen. She had no family name, no pack, no wolf. She had only a first name, Sarah, which an old camp matron had given her when she arrived at the Ironvale labor camp as a 7-year-old child with no memory of how she got there and no one to ask. 15 years had passed since that day. Sarah was 22 now, and she had become very good at being invisible. She woke before dawn every morning. She scrubbed floors, carried linens, and prepared meals for the ranked wolves who ran the camp. She never spoke unless spoken to. She never looked anyone in the eye for too long. She stayed close to walls and moved quietly through doorways, and most days, no one even noticed she was there. That was the goal. That was safety. Her only friend was a girl named Marin, who had a sharp tongue, warm eyes, and a habit of sneaking Sarah extra bread from the kitchen. Marin had a wolf, a small brown one, and sometimes she would let Sarah rest her hand on her wolf's back during the cold nights, just so Sarah could feel something warm. "You deserve better than this place," Marin told her one evening, as they sat together in the narrow space between two storage buildings, looking up at the sky. Sarah smiled a little. "Better is for people who have something to offer. You have plenty to offer. You just don't know it yet." Sarah did not argue. She had stopped arguing with Marin years ago. It was easier to let the words pass through her like wind through an open window. She did not believe them, but she kept them, quietly, somewhere small and private inside her chest. The morning the royal inspection came to Ironvale, Sarah was carrying a large basket of fresh linens across the main courtyard. It was early. The sun had just risen, and the light was pale gold across the stone ground. She was not paying attention. She had learned to watch the floor when she walked. It was safer. It meant she did not accidentally meet the eyes of someone who would take offense. So she was looking down, and the basket was wide, and she did not see the group of people who had stopped in the center of the courtyard until she walked directly into the edge of something solid and broad. The basket dropped. Linens scattered across the stone. Sarah looked up. There were perhaps 15 people standing in the courtyard, all of them in formal clothing, all of them looking at her. At the center of the group stood a tall man with dark hair and sharp gray eyes. He was wearing no crown, but he did not need one. Something about the way he stood, completely still, completely at ease, as if the whole world were simply happening around him while he observed it, told her immediately that this was not a man who was used to being bumped into. She recognized him a half-second later, from the painted portrait hung in the camp's main hall. King Calum Dravik. Her face went hot. She dropped to her knees immediately and pressed her forehead low. "I am so sorry, Your Majesty. I did not see." She heard him then. A short, quiet sound, low and quick, almost like something amused had caught him off guard. He had laughed. Not a big laugh, not a kind one, just one small, dry note of amusement, the way a person might react to something unexpectedly small and strange. She heard one of the courtiers behind him stifle a smile. "Does the camp take in strays now?" he said. His voice was calm, even, like he was commenting on the weather. More quiet laughter from the group around him. Sarah stayed low. Her hands, pressed flat against the cold stone, were trembling. She said nothing. She knew better than to say anything. After a moment, he walked past her. The group followed. The courtyard went back to normal. Sarah sat on the ground for a moment after they had gone, surrounded by scattered linens, staring at the stone between her hands. Stray. She had been called worse. She would be called worse again. She folded the word up, pressed it flat, and put it away somewhere it could not reach her. Then she gathered the linens one by one, placed them back in the basket, stood up, and kept moving. She did not cry. She never did. But deep inside her, something she had no name for had gone very quiet. 3 days later, a royal advisor appeared at the camp. He was a man in his late 30s, with a calm face and careful eyes. His name was Wren, and he spoke to the camp head in a low voice behind a closed door for nearly an hour. Then the camp head came out and called Sarah's name. She was told she was being transferred to the royal palace. Marin grabbed her hand when she heard. "Sarah, what does that mean? What did you do?" "Nothing," Sarah said honestly. "I do not know." She packed the small bundle of things she owned, 2 sets of clothes, a worn book of old stories, and a small smooth stone she had carried since childhood, though she could not remember where it came from. She said goodbye to Marin, who held her tight for a long moment, and whispered in her ear, "Remember what I said. You have plenty to offer." Then she got into the royal carriage and did not look back. The palace was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, but she did not allow herself to be overwhelmed by it. She was given the smallest quarters in the servants' wing, a narrow room with one window that faced a stone wall, and she was assigned to night duties, polishing the floors of the east corridor, which no one used after dark. She worked alone. She did not mind. What she did mind, in the first few days, were the small things she could not explain. The first time she walked through the kennel to deliver a supply box, the king's 3 large hunting dogs stopped what they were doing and followed her. She tried to wave them away. They sat down calmly at the entrance to her corridor instead, and waited there until she was done. The wolf pup in the palace kennel, a young thing, recently weaned, and reportedly too stubborn to eat properly, ate without any hesitation the moment Sarah offered it food from her hand. The palace ravens, which the stable workers warned her were unfriendly, landed on her shoulder twice in 1 week. She mentioned none of this to anyone. She did not know what it meant. She told herself animals were simply unpredictable, and went back to polishing floors. The king did not speak to her again for 2 weeks. She saw him from a distance sometimes, crossing a hallway, standing on a balcony above the training ground, meeting with his advisors in the open council chamber. He was always the same, still, focused, and surrounded by people who were clearly being very careful not to say the wrong thing. She did not think about the laugh. She did not think about him at all, she told herself. She was very convincing, mostly. Then, one night, she was sitting outside the east corridor with a candle and a borrowed book, reading, while she waited for the polishing wax to dry. The book was from the palace archive room. She had borrowed it without asking, which she knew was wrong, but it was 3 in the morning, and no one was ever there, and she had finished her own worn book of stories for the 9th time, and she simply needed something to read. She heard footsteps. She looked up. The king was standing at the far end of the corridor, looking at her. She scrambled to her feet. The book slipped. She caught it. Her face went red. "I apologize, Your Majesty. The book, I only borrowed it. I was not—" "What is it?" he asked. She blinked. "What?" "The book. What is it?" She looked down at the cover, then back up at him. "It is a collection of old records, the history of the wolf bloodlines, before the current kingdom was formed." He was quiet for a moment. Then he walked closer, and she worked very hard at keeping her breathing normal. He stopped a few feet away and looked at the book in her hands. "That archive room has been locked for 3 years, he said. "How did you get it?" "The lock is broken on the east side," she said honestly. "I did not force it. I would not have taken anything if it was properly secured." He looked at her for a long moment. She could not read his expression at all. "Are you always this direct?" he asked. "Only when I am caught," she said. Then she realized what she had said and pressed her lips together. "I apologize." But something had shifted in his face. Not quite a smile, just a slight change around the eyes.
"Keep the book," he said. "Return it when you are done."
Then he walked away, and she stood in the empty corridor for a full minute before she remembered to breathe properly. After that evening, things changed. Not all at once, not dramatically, but they changed. He began appearing in the east corridor more often than made any logical sense, given that no one used it. He did not always speak. Sometimes he walked past and simply glanced at her. Sometimes he stopped, and they spoke for a few minutes about the book, about the history she had read, about things she had noticed in the old records that surprised her. He never complimented her. He never softened his voice or his manner. But he listened to her in a way that no one ever had, carefully, fully, as if what she said was worth considering. She found it unsettling in a way that was hard to describe. Meanwhile, his wolf was doing something even harder to describe. Kale, the obsidian wolf that the palace staff spoke of in almost fearful tones, had begun appearing near wherever Sarah was. She would sense a presence in a doorway and look up to find the great dark wolf simply watching her. He never moved toward her in a way that felt threatening. He only watched, with those quiet silver eyes, and something about the stillness of him felt almost like, she did not have the right word, recognition maybe, like meeting someone you knew from a dream. She told herself she was imagining it. The evening that everything changed, there was a formal gathering in the main hall. Sarah was there as serving staff, carrying a tray along the edges of the room. She stayed close to the walls, the way she always did. A visiting alpha from a neighboring territory, large, loud, and clearly testing how much he could get away with, stepped into her path in the side hallway. He was not there for any reason. He simply saw her and decided, as some people did, that someone with no rank and no name was something he could treat carelessly. He grabbed her wrist to move her aside, harder than necessary, and said something dismissive over his shoulder to the man beside him. Sarah went very still. Then the air in the hallway changed. It was the only way she could describe it later. The air simply changed, heavy and sharp at the same moment, and Kale appeared at the end of the hall with no sound at all, moving fast, and then stopping. He did not attack. He did not growl. He knelt. The great obsidian wolf, the most dominant creature in the kingdom, the wolf that even senior-ranked wolves instinctively stepped back from, lowered his massive head to the floor in front of Sarah. His silver eyes were half closed. His whole body was still. The visiting alpha released her wrist and stepped back very quickly. King Calum appeared in the doorway a moment later, and Sarah understood, from the expression on his face, that he had not commanded this. He had not told Kale to kneel. He had not even known Kale had moved until it was already done. The king himself, pulled forward by something beyond his own will, came to one knee beside his wolf. The hallway was completely silent. Sarah stood very still, looking down at Kale. Slowly, with a hand that was shaking slightly, she reached out and placed her palm on top of the wolf's dark head. Kale exhaled deeply. All the tension left his body at once. Later that night, the king took her to a small private room and told her what his advisor had found. He was not gentle about it. That was not who he was. But he told her everything: the old bloodline, the purge, the gift that had been buried and hidden and erased. He told her she was not who she had been told she was. She was not a stray. She was not nothing. She was the last of something ancient that the world had tried very hard to erase. Sarah sat across from him in the quiet room for a long time after he finished talking. Then she asked, "When you laughed at me, did you know?" "No," he said. No pause, no softening, just the truth. "And now?" He looked at her the way Kale had looked at her in the hallway, careful and full of something that had no clean name. "Kale knew before I did," he said quietly. "He has been trying to tell me since the first second." She thought about the camp, the cold mornings, the borrowed book, the stone she had carried since childhood without knowing why. She thought about Marin's voice in her ear, "You have plenty to offer," and she thought about all the years she had spent making herself invisible, staying small, taking up as little space as possible, so no one would bother to push her out. She thought about the word stray, still folded up and pressed flat somewhere inside her chest. She took it out. She looked at it. Then she let it go. "I want my name back," she said. "My real name, whatever it was." "We will find it," he said. She nodded once, steadily. "Then we will start there." Outside the window, the night was very quiet. Down the hall, Kale lay in the corridor with his head resting on his paws, and for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, he was completely at peace. The wolf had known what the world had forgotten. Some people are not strays. Some people are simply found late. And the ones who are found late tend to change everything.